For this video, you find me with the 2022 Volkswagen Golf R. This one is finished in the Lapis blue metallic paint with the Titan black leather interior. And then tack on the 7-speed dual clutch transmission and delivery. And this spec will come in at $45,440. Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Shifting Lanes. My name is Hanson. Thanks for tuning into the video. And for this one, I want to give you my review of the best car that Volkswagen currently makes. That's the new Mk8 Golf R. And I'll share with you why I love this car so you have a better idea before you buy. And if you learn anything new while watching this or have any feedback, comment it down below. And if you like this style of video review, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell button, because your views and your comments will keep this channel growing. And I'll start by saying that I had fairly low expectations going into this week testing the 2022 Golf R, and here's why. Reason number one is I've tested the Volkswagen GTI before. And I liked it, even though it had some design flaws, like the touch-sensitive buttons and this wacky infotainment system. And those things that I hated in the GTI are here as well. So I was mentally preparing myself to be annoyed with a lot of those things. And reason number two, I personally own a Veloster N. And I like the Veloster N so much more than the GTI. And the price of a new Veloster N being around 10 to 11 grand cheaper than this Golf R means that if you have a Golf R budget and you're into modifying your cars, then you can build a Golf R killer out of a Veloster N and still have many thousands of dollars left over. And reason number three, since filming the GTI, we've learned so much more about the new Toyota GR Corolla. On paper, the specs of that car are really impressive. 1.6 liter turbo 3-cylinder engine making 300 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. An all-wheel drive system out of the GR Yaris, which means that you can vary the torque split between the front and rear axles. And yes, you do have drift mode there too. And even though the crank horsepower is less than the Golf R, the curb weight is 200 pounds less, which means that the power-to-weight ratio of both of those turbocharged all-wheel drive hot hatches are the same. And because of those three reasons, I was ready to say that, yes, this is a nice car, but there are better options out there. I didn't expect to actually fall in love with this thing. And I'll start with the driving experience first. The power plant is a 2-liter turbocharged engine, and it makes 315 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque at the crank. That's 15 pound-feet of torque less than the Euro spec, but hardware is the same, but it's got something to do with our fuels. Also, for an extra $800, you can get this 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, and power is sent to all four wheels via Volkswagen's 4Motion all-wheel drive system. The way this car puts the power down feels almost supercar-like. The power delivery is smooth, turbo lag is very minimal, and the 7-speed dual clutch gearbox changes gears so quickly that it doesn't seem physically possible. And if you don't want the more expensive and superior dual clutch transmission, you can get a 6-speed manual transmission. That's the benefit of us Americans, is that we actually have that option here, because everywhere else, they have to stick with the dual clutch gearbox. I will say that the 4Motion all-wheel drive system is the best thing about this car. And having driven the Veloster N for a couple of years, and also the Mk8 GTI, and a bunch of front-wheel drive hatchbacks and sedans in this channel, I will say that all-wheel drive is just better than front-wheel drive when it comes to general handling characteristics. There's zero drama when you put your foot down in this car. There's no wheel hopping, there's no torque steer. It's just gobs and gobs of grip when you put your foot down as you launch forward. The all-wheel drive system is no longer a Haldex unit. In this channel, we've driven a lot of P2 generation all-wheel drive Volvos, and those have Haldex units too, albeit a much older version. They were fine for that era of cars, but these modern all-wheel drive systems have much better mechanical design than those older cars. For example, the rear differential unit in this Golf R is now made by Magna. It no longer has that Haldex hydraulic coupling unit. You still get 50% of the torque set to the rear axle, but at the rear differential, there's now two clutches, one for the left drive shaft and one for the right drive shaft. And there's actuators in there, and you can actually vary the amount of torque that you send to the left or the right sides. So you can send up to 100% of that rear axle torque to just one side. And this also inherently has an electronic limited slip differential capability. So thus, drift mode is accessible to this Golf R. I don't have access to the track, only this dinky little parking lot and my limited drifting skills, but you can actually drift in the Golf R. And since this car has torque vectoring capabilities, you can do some fantastic things in this car. You can have more grip, you can carry more speed through the corners, and you can also reduce understeer, which is a trait of front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive cars. This will be different than the GR Corolla's drift mode because the all-wheel drive system in that car works differently, and I'll go into how it's different at the end of the video. As for ride and handling, the ride quality is beautiful. There's adaptive damping in this car, and you can vary the damping levels for the compression and rebound. There's so many different settings that you could set this to, so if you want to drive in a more comfortable fashion, you can, or if you want to go more hardcore when you're at the track, put this car into race mode or drift mode or Nürburgring or even custom mode, and you can actually bump up that stiffness all the way up or all the way down if you want to. There's so many different settings that you could set this to. So that's pretty helpful for when you're doing some performance driving. When you're under hard braking, you can prevent the car from taking a dive, and that can also reduce body roll when you're trying to carve the corners. When it comes to everyday driving, put this car in comfort mode and this behaves like a normal commuter car. Steering wise, you can change the damping rates on there as well. There's comfort, sport, and race modes. Whichever setting you choose, the steering feedback and feel is still pretty fantastic. I love how you can tweak all of these characteristics so that the car can fit your driving style. The engine and exhaust sound in this car sounds so much better than the GTI. You can actually hear some pops out the back when you have the windows down. So it's not as raucous as the Veloster N, but it does sound pretty good. Modifying those attributes are easy to do because you have this 10-inch touchscreen. This is another reason why I love the Golf R. The interior looks really, really good. I'll spare you my complaints of the haptic touch-sensitive buttons and the general usability of all the different touch features in here because I've done enough complaining in my Volkswagen GTI and my Volkswagen GLI videos, and I'm sure that all the other video reviews that you've seen about this car spent a good bit of time complaining about all of those features. I will say that even though some of those things are annoying, they're not really showstoppers. They're not valid reasons to not get the Golf R or the Golf GTI. Yes, there's a bit of a learning curve to it, but after driving it for a couple of days, you'll get used to it. And you just have to retrain your brain on how to do certain things. But in terms of interior design, there's a lot to love about the new Golf R. The fully digital instrument cluster is gorgeous. This is Volkswagen's Digital Cockpit Pro, and I love how you can tweak the look of the display. If you're traveling somewhere new and you need to use GPS, you can change the display so that it shows a map on there. Or if you're at the racetrack and you want to be more focused at driving, you can have a much simpler display, which is what's showing right now. The interior layout is also fantastic. If you get the 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, you'll get this tiny shifter. This thing has obviously been sitting in the pool for a little bit too long, but this tiny change kind of opens up the interior cabin space a little bit more, and it makes it feel more spacious. This shifter also reminds me of Volvo's gear shifter, but what's nice here is that the toggle between drive and reverse, you can either push down or up twice, or just do a hard press and it'll immediately change between drive and reverse. And personally, I always have the habit of putting the car into park first before I turn the engine off. But in here, once you've pulled into the spot, you can just press the engine off button and just skip putting it in park altogether. I also love the available features in this car. Heated and ventilated seats for the front, heated outboard rear seats, heated steering wheel. There's beautiful ambient lighting inside that's also customizable. And I just love the ergonomics of the important driving elements like the shape and texture of the steering wheel, the bolstered seats, the bigger paddle shifters, and the nice pedal positioning. As for the exterior design, I think this is the best looking Golf R yet. This is a grown-up's hot hatch. It looks reserved just like the GTI, but there's some giveaways that this is the hotter version of the GTI. The front bumper is unique and looks a bit racier. The side skirts is a bit different. The mirror caps have an aluminum finish. There's a more pronounced but still reserved rear wing. There's bigger and more special front brakes. They're 14.1-inch floating rotor design that has been cross-drilled, and the rears are 12.2-inch vented rotors. Then there's blue calipers that matches the paint. So not only do these brakes provide plenty of stopping power, they elevate the style of the Golf R as well. And finally, at the rear, you have the telltale sign of a Golf R, the beautiful quad exhaust. There's also a nice looking rear diffuser that someone else ruined for me. Overall, what a gorgeous hot hatch this Golf R. If you're someone who thinks the Civic Type R or the Veloster N is a little too much of a cop magnet or too boy racer-ish, this Golf R has a design that fits that bill. It looks grown up, but it still has those aggressive racy details. Pricing wise, it's a steep one. This example is $45,440, and you're in Toyota Supra territory. And also considering that the Nissan Z starting is about $40,000, and that has a 400 horsepower twin turbo V6. And also the upcoming Toyota GR Corolla is probably going to be an aggressively priced alternative, which really excites me for the eventual GR Corolla and Golf R battles. Both of these cars will be closely matched. They're both all-wheel drive, both turboed, and both have clever rear diffs so you can pull off drift mode. Now, earlier I mentioned that the all-wheel drive system in the Golf R is different than the GR Corollas. This sends 50% of the torque to the rear axle, and then there's 2 clutches in the back that could send up to 100% of the rear axle torque to one side. The GR Corolla works a little bit differently, and they both still have drift mode. The way it works in the GR Corolla is the same way it works in the GR Yaris overseas. Basically, the rear axle is slightly geared higher so that it's oversped a little bit. And then there's a clutch at the rear diff, which, depending on how much it's engaged with the prop shaft, it could send between 40 to 50 to up to 70% of the torque to the rear axle. So that's how you can achieve drift mode with the GR Corolla. So I'm really excited to see a comparison between the Golf R and the GR Corolla because they pull off drift modes in very different ways. You could still get the same effect, but it's funny how mechanically they're different. So, since I love the Golf R so much, if I had $45,000 to spend, would I buy the Golf R? If I was looking for a daily driver that has all-wheel drive and can also be my track weapon and also not stick out like a sore thumb everywhere I drive, then I totally would buy the Golf R because this fits that bill perfectly. But once the GR Corolla comes out, which does stick out like a sore thumb, I may have to reconsider. Now, in terms of reliability, I wish that I could talk more about reliability of these cars, but I don't have enough information to tell you whether this is reliable or not because these are press cars. We only get these for about a week. I will say that so far this has been trouble-free for the week that I've had this, but I will say that the Golf GTI that I had many months ago, that did provide some problems for me. At some point, the infotainment system just went black and a bunch of the sensors just did not work. I don't know what the reason was, but that did happen. If you have a Golf R and you have run into issues, please leave a comment down below so that other people can know about it. But to summarize, I've really enjoyed my time with the Golf R. I wish I had this a little bit longer, but this is a really fun car to drive. It feels refined, it can be comfortable when you want it, and it can be nasty when you want it. And I just love cars that you could kind of tweak the behavior to fit your style. With that said, I want to thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. If you've learned something or if you have any comments or feedback, leave a comment down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe and that notification bell so that you can be notified anytime we make a new video. Let's just end it right there. I want to thank you so much again for watching all the way till the end. My name's Hanson. This has been the 2022 Volkswagen Golf R, and I'll see you in the next one.